Okay, welcome back, everyone, for part two of Maximizing Your Child's Success in School. Rabbi Goodman, before we continue, can you please give us a summary from the last webinar?
Sure. And once again, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. And I'll just give a quick synopsis of what we did last time. The first thing that we discussed was the importance of parents realizing that even though we send our children to school, but we as the parents are responsible for their progress. We can't give that over to the school. In order to fulfill that responsibility, we have to be proactive and to do whatever we can to make sure that our children are thriving. Now, so to make it easier to remember, I explained what I call the PCS triangle, the parents, child, and school, right? Imagine a triangle with the parents at the top point, a child at another point, and a school at the third point. And the parents are on top because they have to make sure that a positive synergy flows in all directions, right? If you have 3 points and in each direction, that means we have 6 directions. And we covered 3 of them in the last webinar. I'll give a quick review and we'll go on to the final 3. The 6 directions are responsibilities of the parents to the school and child. So that's 2. Responsibilities of the school to the parents and child. That's another 2. And the responsibilities from the child to the school and parents for a total of 6. So the first thing we discussed is the parents first. So the parents to the child, we talked about that the most important thing is that our children must feel that we have their backs. We are not only there to keep them safe, but we are there to make sure that we will do whatever we can for them to thrive. And they have to know this and feel this. And then we talked about how we must know our children and be connected to them. And the only way to connect is by knowing them. We talked about that our children should know that we check on them periodically with the school system. And we must praise our children and tell them how proud we are of them, in a nutshell. The second part of the parents is from the parents to the school now. So again, we gave a hakdama, a preface, that we must first realize that most teachers are working under less than perfect circumstances. They don't get paid enough. They usually have a large amount of students in their class. There could very well be difficult students, and yes, even difficult parents to have to deal with. And they may not be sufficiently trained, and they have all sorts of pressures and deadlines and goals that they're trying to reach. So the pressure of the teachers is really tremendous. So again, we must appreciate that teachers and principals are the unsung heroes of Klal Yisrael for the tremendous dedication in often difficult circumstances. Now, after understanding this on a practical level, the first thing that we must do is create a positive synergy with the teachers. That means being in touch with them regularly. It means making them feel appreciated by complimenting them, either by phone or with a note. And we mentioned about giving presents. I said, don't wait until Purim. An envelope for the Yom Tovim would be greatly appreciated. Oh, and since the last webinar, I saw in the name of the Novominsker Rebbe that said that shoichad, we all know bribery is prohibited, it's usur, with one exception, giving a generous gift to a mechanech. It is not only allowed, but recommended. So if anybody had any doubts last week when I talked about that, they said, oh, but it's shoichad. I saw since then that the Novominsker Rav Zatzal said that it's not only an isser, not only allowed, but a recommended thing to do to give a present for your teacher. And he says that even if you're doing it with the intent that you know they're going to pay more attention to your child. And the final thing we talked about, when you speak to the teachers, speak to them with respect, even if you disagree with them. I unfortunately hear some horror stories about how parents will talk to teachers, and not only they're human beings, but they're right now in charge of your children. You have to treat them with respect. And besides keeping in contact with the teacher, we discussed and gave several examples that the school should be aware of any issues at home, any changes, whether small or big, a difference if a parent has to go away for a while for whatever reason, to any more serious issues. they should always be aware of what's going on, and therefore they can keep their eyes open for any changes in our children. They keep their eyes open to know that maybe this child needs a little extra TLC during this period. Whatever the case is, it's only will help the child if we tell the school what is going on. And the third direction we discussed is now we're starting with the school. We discussed about from the school to the parent. And I mentioned that, I hear many times from parents that the school just suspended their child or punished him severely. And they said they had no idea that anything was amiss. Now, clearly, in such a case, the parents and school suffer from a lack of communication. It is vital for the school to be in touch with us, the parents, as we need to assume, but since they're not going to do it necessarily because of all the pressure that they're under, we as the parents have to make sure and assume the responsibility to make it happen. We should speak to the teachers about it. We can ask them to please give us regular updates, whether it's a quick note, a text, an email. But we should tell them, especially if the teacher sees any signs of change in a child, that they're slacking off a little bit, or any other changes that's not appropriate for the child, they should contact us immediately. And hearing these reports has many advantages. I mean, first of all, positive messages will allow parents to relay that feedback to the child while expressing their pleasure and pride. And if we do that, obviously tell our children, that would just encourage them to do even more, to do even better. So that's one advantage. Another, if there's an issue and the parents become aware of it immediately before it snowballs into significant problems and can work with the teacher and the child how to improve them. And the child feels secure that his parents know about his school experiences. So again, this is in a small nutshell what we discussed last time more at length. But just to get us going, that's a summary from the last webinar, part one.
I guess that if we just discuss school to parent, then the next step would be school to child. Is that correct?
Correct. And that is our fourth direction now, right? The fourth direction is school to child. Now, what responsibility does the school have to the child that besides the teaching that we as parents can help make sure happens? So just like we discussed by that the parents must create a synergy between the school and us, the parents, that they should be in touch with us, so too in a similar vein, we can help create that connection between the school and the child. We can encourage the teachers to praise our children regularly. Tell the teacher, my child just thrives on compliments. If you compliment my child, you'll have the child eating out of your hand, tell them. He'll do whatever you want. And simply requesting this from the teachers, that they pay attention to your child and give them compliments, will ensure that they do pay attention. You can ask the teacher to comment on daily interactions, such as their class participation or their questions. Say, that was great, that you participated, that you answered nicely, you spoke up, whatever it is. And we get a teacher into a habit of doing that. Not only will help our child, but it will benefit any student that this teacher has now or in the future, once they get into a habit of giving compliments and complimenting our children. Because only, it's unfortunate, but many times it's only the top performing students that receive the positive feedback. And therefore, ensuring that your child is praised for his accomplishment and hard work can provide a tremendous boost, especially for a weaker child. Now, again, you should acknowledge to your teacher that you understand he has many students, and it may not be easy to focus on your child, but mention how crucial it is for your child. Even the teacher says, I'll try, I don't know if I can. But once you put the request in once or twice, it will work. And don't forget, teachers will be more inclined to invest time and care in your child when they feel appreciated and complimented, which brings us back to the original thing that we did. And, I'll just tell you an example that comes to mind. We had a boy that we were working with. He was in Kita Zayin, 7th grade, which in Israel here, it's the year before 8th grade, which is an extremely crucial year, because that will decide which yeshiva katana he'll get into, and that will decide which yeshiva gdoila he gets into, will decide which shidduch he goes into, and Kita Zayin is the base for that. So we had a student, he was a good student, he wasn't a top student, but he was a serious student, he tried hard. It wasn't the easiest thing for him to learn Gemara, and they were getting into the Gemara and the Meforshim already. And it was a little difficult for him. And he was a quiet boy. So we spoke to the Rebbe, and the first the Rebbe said, I got to be, we kind of asked the Rebbe to call on him more, bring him out more, or make him open up. And the Rebbe's response, I think there were about 40 boys in the class, maybe 35. And his response was that, there's so many boys in the class and he has to teach. And those that speak up will get the attention. But if he doesn't speak up, I saw that, talking to him, we spoke to him a few times. So we had to try a different approach to get the child to speak up. Finally, his mentor was learning with him, helping him with the shir. Finally, got a question from one of the Rishonim. And the boy finally got up the guts, which was very hard for him, to ask the question in class. And the teacher's response was, it's not a question. And I couldn't believe it. First of all, any question a child asks is a great question, no matter how much of a not a good question it is, right? But it's a great question, especially a boy who never speaks up in class. And especially this question happened to be a question from one of the Rishonim. So I happened to have called up the Rebbe and leave it up to the mentor. And I said, we're trying to work with this boy. He finally got to speak up. And you told him it's not a question? So right away he realized he made a mistake and he felt bad. And I said, by the way, it's a question from one of the Rishonim, which he wasn't aware of. And he really felt bad. And I said, you know what, you got to go there. You broke this child. He's broken now. We worked so hard with him. We got him built up. We built up his self-esteem enough to speak up. And then this Rebbe, after seeing how he messed up, how he messed up, went out of his way to compliment this child and build him up, to try to fix up where he messed up. And from this, the child slowly but surely started asking more questions, and the Rebbe finally made sure to listen to his questions and to build him up. And once the Rebbe started building him up, we saw how much this child grew, not just in his knowledge of the class, but also in his own self-esteem and how he felt about himself. It was a different boy. So getting a teacher on board may not always be easy, but it is so crucial.
What can you do if you feel that the teacher isn't acting fairly or doesn't even like your child?
That's a loaded question. I'm not sure it came out clear. I think you want to know if the teacher isn't acting fairly or doesn't like your child.
Right.
Loaded question that we get many times, unfortunately. Now, a point worth mentioning is that we also have to realize that the needs of the class sometimes conflict with our own child's needs. The child might not be able to work towards our child's best interests all the time. But again, it doesn't mean to give up. It just means to keep that in mind when we are developing a strategy in how to deal with the issue. We also must appreciate that even though, as we discussed, that teachers are unsung heroes, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, but they're not superheroes. They are regular human beings. Nobody is perfect. And believe it or not, a teacher, please excuse me, all principals and school staff members out there, but not all teachers always do the right thing. And the teacher just might not like your child. Maybe your child doesn't act respectfully. Maybe he's outspoken and the teacher feels threatened by him. Maybe your child is independent. Maybe your child dresses nicer than he does. And your teacher is just not relating, whatever the reason may be. That is a possibility.
What can you do about it?
So we have to keep that in mind, that the first thing we have to realize, what is our long-term game plan, right? The long-term game plan is for the child and the teacher to connect as much as possible. So therefore, our job is to advocate for the child by working with, not against the teacher. Therefore, you must invest effort to turn the teacher into a friend, to an ally. This is much easier if you follow steps that we discussed earlier about respecting them and showing appreciation. The rule is that if you preserve the teacher's dignity, he will cooperate with you more. But if you attack him, he'll just resent your child even more. And we've seen this on many occasions when parents work with the school as partners. then the children are successful. But if parents fight with the teachers, fight with the school, they come up, I'm talking about, and could be the parents are right, but there's only one losing side in such a war, and that's the child. So additionally, what you have to do is discuss with the teacher how to help your child. Ask the teacher for their opinion. How can you help your child progress? And encourage your child to accept responsibility. And when your teacher sees that you and your child are prepared to follow his advice, he'll be more inclined to work with your child. So you got to get on the same page. You got to follow the advice of the teacher, whether it has something to do with behavior, whether it has to do with how to do the work, whatever it is, you got to get the teacher on your side. And then we can accomplish it.
What parents tried all the above and it still hasn't helped?
You're not letting go.
I'm here to ask the hard-hitting questions.
Look, if this approach if you tried all this, then you should find someone, preferably from within the school staff, someone who's willing, who knows your child, maybe a previous teacher, maybe the principal, to speak to the teacher of the child, to try to get the teacher to perceive your child differently, to reframe the scenario, to point out your child's milas. Maybe if this teacher would hear from other teachers, about your child or someone else. And if that intervention has no effect, again, still refrain from clashing with the teacher or school, because your child will not gain. Instead, bring in a third party, maybe a Rav, respected, educated, to advocate for your child and to offer practical solutions and how to move forward. If there's an organization in your neighbor like Epic Family, like we do, many times we will advocate for the child. We're in touch with schools, here in Israel, become the bridge between the school system and the Anglo community. So a lot of times we do fulfill that role of making shalom between the families in the school. Maybe if you're in your city, you have an organization like that, a Rav, try to find somebody to help smooth out the situation, because it's something that must be taken care of and needs your attention.
Maybe you just touched upon another aspect of the child to the school. Can you tell us more about how that relationship works?
Yeah, okay. So this will bring us to the next step, the final two directions of now the child. So the first, as you said, we'll talk about the child to the school, because obviously the child has responsibility for success in school, but we need to teach him and guide him what are those responsibilities for him and how to carry them out. Now, as I like to say, there are 4 steps I recommend that you should encourage your child to implement. Okay, the first step is respect. Like we talked about, us as parents respecting the teachers, we also have to teach our children to respect their teachers. Teach them to communicate with the teachers and all school staff in a respectful manner. Your child has to know that to speak to a teacher with the respect and honor them is of utmost importance, and anybody on the staff. And not just speaking to them, but participating in class, besides its own benefits, also shows respect. And non-participation shows a lack of respect. The more that they can participate, the better, whether it's asking questions or offering to give answers or volunteering to do things. But not paying attention or talking to other students during class only shows a lack of respect, which is very hard for a person to overlook, no matter how great or big that person is. I mean, honestly, how would you feel about talking to a person who doesn't listen to you when you're giving a class? How are you going to want to relate to that person? So there's only so much you can expect from our teachers. And we should tell our children that it's not only a matter of being a mensch, but it's worthwhile for him to do it, since once he does, his teacher will be inclined to help him and go the extra mile for him when needed, as opposed to the student who disrespects the teacher. The next step, I'll call, is have your child appreciate. Verbalize appreciation, such as, teacher, that lesson today was so interesting. I found I never knew that. I appreciate it. Or you tell the teacher, you explained that so clearly. Or you can even say, I appreciate the patience for explaining it to me until I understood. Again, it's important for children to perceive teachers as regular people also, who need positive feedback and compliments, just like we do. Just this Shabbos, I heard A Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Kana told me that when they had a Hanukkah Masiba for their students, they gave out lots of prasim, prizes for, he told me it was like over $2,000 worth of prizes, something like that, for the students who did I don't know, a certain test, a certain, whatever it was, they did a certain thing that they're being rewarded for. And the Rashiva told me he couldn't believe it when they gave out a couple dozen boys as prize, and only a handful thanked him for the prize. And he couldn't believe it. So then he tells me that the next morning he gave a shmooze, it was the last day before they broke for a few days vacation, and he gave a shmooze, and he mentioned this, and that he was very upset. That Hakar Sato is one of the basic midos that a person needs. And here we are last night, we gave out prizes, and only a handful of boys came. So then he asked me, and how many boys do you think came over to me after that shmooze to now say thank you? So I said, 5. Obviously, it was a low number. I said, 5. He said, please don't exaggerate. 2 boys, 2, maybe it's 3. No, I think he said 2 boys came over to him to say thank you then. So teaching our children to say thank you and showing our appreciation for class is extremely important. It's a basic midah that's needed.
So when we tell our children, are we telling them to compliment a teacher? Are we telling them to lie or to use flattery?
No, look, absolutely not. We're not teaching them to lie, flatter. That's not what we're trying to do. We're teaching them to be a mensch. Teaching to be a mensch. That's what we're teaching. You're teaching your child to show appreciation, which is a social tool that he needs for life. Hakar Sato is a fundamental midah that everyone needs to have. If your child says that, but I don't know what to tell my teacher, then tell me, you know what? Go spend 10 minutes thinking about it. If he doesn't have something to think of, to know what to say to his teacher to appreciate, let them think about it. This is such an extremely important life tool. You know, we just take everything for granted these days, and we don't appreciate what we have. If we can educate our children to think about what we receive from people, then to show appreciation for it, you've just given them an invaluable tool, which will make his shalom bayis better, will make his life at work, in yeshiva, wherever he is, and everybody around him will be so much happier if he gets this tool. So that's showing appreciation. The next step is I would tell a child to ask for advice. This could be on a personal level. It could be on a scholastic level. They can ask questions, you know, teacher, ask your advice. I got into a fight with so-and-so, maybe a sibling, maybe a friend. What can I do to fix it up? And scholastically, you know, if let's say they had a report or a project to do, they can discuss with the teacher, I was thinking of doing such and such on my project. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think I should do it this way? Do you think I could do it that way? If they get advice and if they feel it's not working out, no, they should go back to the teacher. You know, sometimes they, you know, I tried, it didn't work. So go back to them, say, you know, I tried this, did I do it wrong? Should I try something differently? Go back to them. And when they're doing this and asking for advice, so first of all, it's helping them connect with the teacher. It's helping that the teacher will definitely pay attention to them more, because we're seeing that, you know, that they're mavakish, they want to know. And it would be tremendous for your child to learn this tool to ask for advice from people. And finally, the fourth thing that I say is that children need to know that they're part of a group and help contribute to a group. If your child has an idea that will help benefit the class, the school, let them go discuss it with the teacher, right? I'm not talking about an idea where you know, say, you know, we should have more parties in school. You know, something serious that they could do for a teacher. You know, maybe a party if we did for such and such, and that'd be great. But an idea, let them put in their 2 cents. If something needs volunteers, let them be the first to volunteer. And this is another important life that we can teach our children. You know, as Jews, we are unique, that we always need for the klal, whether it's being involved in our shul or our schools. And there's a myriad amount of organizations that we have. There's Hatzalah, Bikur Chayim, Achnosis Kala. The list is endless. But they all need people to participate in some form or other. And you want your child to grow to be part of a tzibur. So give them this advice that if they should feel already part of a group now. And so again, all these tools, not just all these tools that we just discussed, whether it's asking for advice, whether it's appreciation, whether it's being part of a group, all these tools will not only help him now during his school years, but will give him a solid basis for interpersonal relationships as he grows older.
Is there anything else that the child needs for the child to school relationship?
Yes, yes, definitely is. Now, again, the four categories we've just discussed, the respect, appreciation, advice, and the group, all pertain between his direct relationship and the school. But there's another point which is also very important, and that is that has to be doing well in his schoolwork. And I'll get back to soon what I define as doing well in schoolwork. What's that considered? But before that, I want to first emphasize that it isn't only important for a child to know his material for the sake of knowing it, but many times it's just as important, and maybe even more important, that he knows it for his self-esteem. Knowing this will make a difference on how you react if you learn with him or how you take care of things. We have to remember we want them to know their materials. Now, again, for a younger child in Chumash, if he doesn't know this Rashi, he'll know it when he gets older. But he might have to know it to feel good about himself, right? So keeping in mind that he has to know it for self-esteem is very important. And I'll give you an example. I'm sure many people go out to Avos Ubanim or start learning the base medrash. And unfortunately, I've seen many times fathers learning with their sons, where you see the son is tense and the father's angry, and then you'll get to see the son will even start crying. And obviously, there's the father could be yelling at him, hopefully quietly because it's in a base medrash, but he's yelling at him for not knowing the material. Again, our long-term goal here is for our children to love learning, which will he only do if he feels good about himself when he learns. But if a father yells at him week after week, you think this boy is going to grow up with the love of learning, or is he going to hate it? Right? A person told me once that he hates learning because he used to learn with his father's chumash, which means before Gemara, probably before Mishnah. He must have been, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old at the time, and how his father would yell at him week after week. And that was before it was a bunim, he was learning with his father's in the house. And then his father would pick up the phone in front of him and call up the Rabbi and yell at the Rabbi, why doesn't his son know the material? And then he would go back to the boy and yell at the boy, tell him you got to try harder, you got to listen better, etc. Like what's that going to accomplish? I mean, one thing I can tell you, by yelling and getting upset at a child for not knowing their material, or by just telling a child you should be trying harder, listen better, it's not going to get you anywhere in the best case scenario, and could cause a lot of damage in a worst case scenario.
What are you supposed to do?
So you have to do is like this. You have to first identify the source of the issue. Now, again, and there's different levels that could be going on. If a child didn't prepare assignments or do homework properly because they were doing something else, but they had no problem doing it, if they would have done it, they would have done it properly, then you have to deal with that. If they have the ability to understand and sit in class, but they don't, but that if they would, they are able and capable of it, but they don't, then these things can be usually dealt with incentives, some positive reinforcement, or consequences, if need be. But those are the simpler cases. However, if let's say a child is trying, but still has trouble, then you need to find out what it is. It might just be something as simple as a tutor. Now, it could be a parent, but again, when I say parent learning with a child, I tell us all the time, only if you have patience to learn with your child. If you don't have the patience, go hire somebody. And better yet, and if you want to learn with your child, learn something else, not from school. Make your own set, go teach them something else. Because when a child senses your frustration, and they will feel it, then you will pressurize him more and negatively impact his self-esteem. And he's just going to freeze. He's just not going to be able to accomplish anything that way. So if that's the case, he might just see that extra help, then make sure he has that extra tutor. Now, there could be many other issues. And that's assuming that you've ruled out, get them test out any learning disabilities, seeing disabilities, hearing disabilities, anything. It has to be ruled out, checked for, and ruled out. Even hearing issues, it could be, you might at home, have a child who, for whatever circumstances, a doctor told us to go take a hearing test. And we were surprised hearing, we didn't see any issues. But sure enough, we found out that was an issue by her, and she needed hearing aids. And so you have to rule out all these things and don't just say, nah, it's not that. You got to check them out. And then again, there might be other issues, might call emotional issues. Maybe don't have enough self-esteem. Maybe a child feels pressure. This could happen very often in the classroom. That makes it hard to concentrate. He's self-conscious about what people think about him, about the way he looks, about the way he dresses, and he feels a certain pressure in the classroom. So therefore that helps, that makes that he can't concentrate in class. Or sometimes he feels a pressure to do well, and that that competition is also, he's too pressured to do well, and he also can't concentrate properly because of that. So these are many issues that could be, and again, it's beyond the scope of this webinar to address how to deal with these issues and how to find these issues to begin with. But turn to a professional that could help you find the cause to deal with it. Turn to an organization in your neighborhood, similar to like what we do, Epic Family, and that can help you with these issues. But you must find out what it is, and only then can you work on it.
I hope that you would explain what is considered doing well in schoolwork. Can you?
Right. Okay. So this is a very important point. And once again, this will be a lesson for life. And again, I hope I won't get any feedback, negative feedback from any teachers or principals if anybody's listening to this. The emphasis of a child's schoolwork should not be the final result, meaning the grade, but it should be the process of getting there, meaning the effort that was used to get there. Meaning that if a child gets straight A's, but they invested very little effort, obviously the child is bright. And without putting in the effort, he could just fine. But this child will always rely on his brain and won't be used to putting in the work when it becomes necessary, when he gets out there in real life, whether it goes to a higher grade yeshiva or university or work, whatever it is. And it'll be challenging for him if he's not used to thinking. Such a child should be told, Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave you tremendous present, and needs to be used in exercise. If a child can't be put into a higher class, and the class itself, the teacher has to make sure that most of the class understands the material. So it can't raise maybe the level of the class because it's for this child. Then ask the teacher to find other ways to challenge him, give him extra work, give him extra assignments, or maybe outside of the school. Let him have a mentor that will challenge him. It could be whether learning the same material more in depth, or maybe it could be learning something else. Same thing with the girl. If it doesn't have to be learning, it could be a project, learn a different skill, something. But they should be exercising the muscles of putting in effort. And each child must be taught that Hashem wants to see our efforts. Now, if let's say a child puts in the effort, but it's not getting a good grade, so we have to tell that Hashem wants to see those efforts. And when the end result is only up to Hashem, it's only within our ability to do whatever we can, and we must do whatever we can. We must strive and put in the effort for the best results possible. But if we have done that, then we have succeeded, no matter what the results are. It doesn't matter what the results are. So when parents have accepted this and put this into practice, it not only freed parents from an unnecessary anxiety, but also the child. And then the child's able to focus on the effort and not the grade. And listen to this. When the child focuses on the effort, that enables the child to get better grades because he's focusing on the effort. Once he does that, that's an easier thing to focus on than the A. I don't see it too often anymore, but I know that once report cards used to have 2 columns next to the subject. One was the grade of the subject, and next it was the effort put in, right? We used to make fun of them. Sometimes people got an A in the subject, but would get a not a good grade in the effort. Like, so the kid would maybe be proud, look, I got an A without any effort, but that's not something to really be proud about. Whereas if somebody got a lower grade and gets a high effort, that's a tremendous thing. That is what we're here to do. That's why I say it's not the final grade that's what counts. It's the process, the effort to get there. And I wish they would put back in that effort column into the thing. Unfortunately, in the same vein, we see sometimes that schools and yeshivas, this is the criteria they're looking for. They're looking for those A students. They're not focusing on the students that are trying hard and are working. But we as parents, we must put the emphasis on the effort and not the grades. And I hope I don't get any backlash for this. but I want to add one more thing, that once we're addressing what to put the emphasis on, we talked about report cards. When my children would come home with their report cards, and now with my grandchildren, the first section that I would look at is the midos section. And Baruch Hashem, they haven't removed that section from the report cards. Hope they won't. But I will start with derech eretz, and I'll tell them that's the grade that matters the most, derech eretz. And then we'll talk about something about being on lechavero, and then participation in shir, and all the midos tovos. These are the things that are important. These are things that are important, and that's being lost. Reminds me of a story with my oldest son, who's now his oldest daughter came bas mitzvah a few months ago. So when he was in fifth grade, so I want to go back 20 years approximately, fifth grade, I made one of these phone calls to his Rabbi to check in on him, right? I used to be a little nudge in a nice way, always checked in on my teachers. But again, they appreciated my calls because I respected them. I appreciated them, as I mentioned more detail in the part one of this webinar. And I asked him, how's my son doing? And he says, great, Baruch Hashem, he knows his material, he's very good, he knows his thing. And then I said, yeah, but about his midos, does he talk to you, derech eretz? How did he get along with his classmates? And Baruch Hashem, he gave me a great report. Fine. I happened to bump into this Rabbi, who's actually now the principal of the school, and a few days later, and he said, I have to tell you something. You called me, he says, I want to take a contrast. You called me and you asked me, about your son. I started telling you about how well he's doing in class, and you wanted to hear more about his midos. He said, a few minutes after I hung up from you, another father calls me up, also to ask about his son. So first I thought, wow, great. Other fathers are calling up too, from time to time, not just waiting for the PTA meetings. And he starts telling the father that, your son was chewing gum in the middle of Gemara shir. And I asked him to please, spit it out. He wasn't, chewing it very nicely, and I asked him to spit it out. And he talked back to me in a not derech eretz stick away. And the father said, yeah, okay, but how's he doing? Does he know his Gemara? That was his response. So here, the Rebbe saw the contrast in how some parents are concerned about the academics, and some people are concerned about, again, you got to be concerned about both. But where are we putting our emphasis? If you know your Gemara, or your any material, but you don't have the midos. Chazal tell us, Tam Chacham without derech eretz in the vela toivimeno, a dead animal, which isn't very pleasant, is better than that. So it's important. We have to stress the emphasis on midos too. And I know I got sidetracked, but once we're talking about report cards, I wanted to get that in there also.
So the direction of child to school, you discussed his responsibility and how to talk and treat teachers. You also spoke about how he has to know his schoolwork, what his responsibilities are, and you stressed an important part of this is self-esteem, just as much as knowing the material and emphasizing the effort over the grades. Are there any other things for the direction of a child to school, or was that it?
Well, look, there's once we're doing, I'll mention there's a few basic things that we'll call the back end of the child's responsibility to the school in order for him to be successful. He must sleep well. A lot of times kids, maybe teenagers more, they don't make the connection that there's a connection between the time you go to sleep and the time you wake up, and feeling grumpy in the morning if you went to sleep late the night before. They don't make that connection. But for a child to well in school, he must be well rested. He must eat well. He must drink enough. I see myself, if I don't drink enough, my head starts getting, like it's hard to concentrate. And that's usually a sign that I haven't been drinking enough. So you have to make sure that all this back end is taken care of. They have to be organized. You have to teach them organization, which, might be a class in itself, but they have to be organized with their school schedule. They know what to take for each days. And my daughters, it was so complicated. So many teachers, each day they had to fill up their knapsack according to which classes were that day, because each day of the week was a different class. They have to be organized with their school materials. They have to make sure that they have everything that they could possibly need and that it's orderly and in good shape, working shape. We should make sure that they're trained in that projects and homework are done on time in a likely manner, and they shouldn't just cram for it or do it the night before. They have to do these things. There's a terrible story about a child was about 10, 11 years old, and his parents asked him all the time, "Did you do your homework?" And he said, "Yes." And the child basically, I heard this in his adult years later. The child basically told me that, yeah, he liked his parents because he wanted to go play, watch TV, whatever it was. He told his parents yes, and that was it. Now, obviously, he wasn't getting great grades in school because of this, and and there was a lack of communication. The school, I guess, wasn't being in touch with the parents enough. And one time when it came that the boy didn't do his homework again, the teacher yelled at him in front of the class. It's boys like you that grow up to be garbage men. Okay. We're talking about a 10, 11-year-old boy. That's what the teacher yells at him in front of everybody. Now, for sure, the teacher shouldn't have said everything. And the teacher should have been in touch with the parents. But if the parents would have been on top of the situation, asked to see the homework from time to time, not because they want to policeman him, to make sure it's getting done. Show an interest. Oh, yes, show me. I'm curious to see what your homework looked like. What type of questions did they ask? What did you have to do? And then you will memela see what is being done, what's being accomplished. If that would have been done, it never would have escalated to such a terrible scenario where this person told me it took him years to get over of that.
Now, the sixth direction is from the child to parents. What responsibility does a child have to his parents that he needs in order to be successful in school?
Okay, so fine. So this is the final direction, the child to the parents. So for a child to succeed in school, there are two very important parts that he can do at home that will help him. The first thing is he must be a giver. Let's be a giver. Children must feel they contribute in a positive way to the function of their environment, both at home and in school. And what we can do to facilitate that is by providing the opportunities that he could contribute in a meaningful way. There's an amazing, the Gemara Nedarim tells us that there's 4 people that are considered as dead, right? The poor man, a blind man, a leper, and someone with no children. So what's the common denominator between these 4 people that they're considered dead? So Chaim Shmulevitz has a phenomenal explanation. He explains that these 4 people can't help other people. The poor man doesn't have the resources to help others. The leper, he's chutz machane, he's in quarantine. He can't help other people where he is. The blind man can't see what other people need. And someone without children do not have the offspring to give to help. So Chaim Shmulevitz explains that the need to be able to give is so strong that if it's not met, then he's considered a dead person. And I'm not going to he's march there to prove this point with a few cases, but the point is that a person needs to be able to give. And it's a very strong idea, but why is it like that? Why is it a part of a person's need to have to be able to give to someone? And I believe that everyone needs to feel he can contribute because he has to feel he has a value. In other words, giving is vital for someone's self-esteem. For when I can help somebody, it shows I have something to offer. I'm worthwhile. I am helping somebody. I'm giving somebody. And therefore, every person needs to feel that he can contribute. Everyone needs self-esteem. So we must invest time to think about, determine what are our child's strengths, and then provide him with suitable responsibilities at home where he can give and help others. Likewise, ideally, a child who will assume responsibility at school will also boost his self-esteem and strengthen his connection to the school, as we discussed earlier also. A parent several years ago came, they had a child who wasn't happy. He was doing well in school, but, he was just like, and I really didn't know what to tell them. But Hashem put into my head the idea of this Chaim Shmulevitz. I said, you know what? Does your child do any chesed groups? Does he do anything? And he said, no, not really, says he doesn't, but, not especially. I said, let him open up a gemach in his yeshiva or something. Think of something where he has to give people. And let's see if that does anything. And he went ahead and he did that. And the parents told me after a while It made such a change in this person. He said, not only did he open up a gemach, I don't remember now what it was exactly, but he got more people involved to do things. Whether it was, I remember, I think they went to go visit people in a nursing home, and he got people to get other people to do things. And they say how the fact that he started giving, how it changed his whole attitude and made him so much happier. So again, the first point is to give our children the opportunity to be givers. And the second point is that a child must also feel he's competent. Children must feel they are competent in doing the work expected of them. And a child, in order for him to have a healthy sense of self-esteem and to succeed in all areas, therefore we have to know what is he competent in, and therefore offer him the opportunity to do that, to praise him for those things as much as possible, to show him that he can do it, right? Sometimes a child, and I can't do it, I can't do it. Say, you can't, let's see, maybe you can, maybe you can, let's try it out. Find the strengths of your child, what they know, and build on them, and spread his horizon, show that he can. And then, of course, you build him up when he shows he can. And it's so important. We worked with a family once, made Aliyah. They came with a 12-year-old boy. He was a straight A student in America, and they made Aliyah. And they figured for this child won't be an issue because he's a straight A student. After a few months, the school, the cheder that he was in, contacts us and tells us, listen, call us cautious, but there's a limit. He's there several months already. He couldn't get over a 40% on his test, on a test. And unsurprisingly, his self-esteem started, he started losing his self-esteem. He started hanging out with the wrong group of kids. And such a situation where it now could quickly deteriorate and chas v'shalom lead to this child leaving the system if you don't catch it now. So what we did is we arranged for a mentor to learn with the child. And we worked together with the school. And what happened was that this mentor would learn the whole week with the child, the Gemara, would tell the teacher what the child knew. And for that week, the teacher would only test the child on that material. Till the child finally, and slowly but surely, once the child started feeling good about himself and getting good grades again, he slowly was able to cover. He was just having a hard time in a new environment, a new country, a new language. It took him that extra time. But if we didn't show him that he's capable of doing it and showing it to him, he would have lost his self-esteem, and it could have been the beginning of the end to him. And it wasn't long till this boy was once again getting top grades. And, Baruch Hashem, Siyata D'Shmaya, he was able to once again become a top student.
Are there any other points for helping maximize our child's success in schools?
So yes. So, there's something just as important as some things that we discussed, maybe even more important than some of the things on the PSC triangle, and that is friends. Who your child's friends are will also make a tremendous impact on how they do in school. And again, it's beyond the scope of this work, and how to help them find the right friends, what to do if they don't find the right friends. It's not so simple. And, maybe we'll try to work on maybe another episode focusing on friends alone. But that's something we should keep in mind, is how important friends is. And of course, and there's another very important point that comes before everything that we said. That's why I didn't even start with it, because it's a prerequisite to everything, is tefillah, is davening for our children's success every single day. And this is so important. We discussed it at length at our Global Parenting Summit in the spring. And I'm sure this coming spring, Bez Hashem, will have another Global Parenting Summit. It's going to obviously come up because it's the time of Erev Shchei Yisivim. We talk about the Tefillas Hashlah. And it's not, don't wait till Erev Shchei Yisivim daven for your children. Don't wait till that. You could say Tefillas Hashlah any day, or any other tefillah. You could say any day. And this is something that needs to be talked about and worked on more, is also davening for our children's success.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Goodman, for a very informative webinar and for giving us very useful practical tools on ensuring our children's success in schools. Do you have any closing remarks?
Let me just share with you, what happens when a person uses this synergy that we discussed. A beautiful story with a nephew of mine. He lives in the 5 towns. Didn't tell me if I could use his name or not. We'll call him Ari, which is his first name. And he told me that, one time his son came home from school and they're about to have a class trip. But his son didn't want to go on the class trip. And he wanted to know, like, why? It's strange. He doesn't want to go on a class trip. And now, because of the relationship that they had with his child, he found out he's especially nervous about going because part of the trip was going to a roller skating rink. And he never did roller skating before. And he was afraid he's going to be laughed at for his inability to skate properly. So he'd rather not go than go and face this possibility of being laughed at for not skating. So now, the parents could have done a couple of things. They could have just go, don't worry about it. Everybody's going to be falling. Nobody knows what to do. Don't worry about it. And then, what would have happened if his fears would have been realized? Alternatively, the parents could have let him stay at home. But then they would have disempowered him by unwillingly teaching him that to avoid difficulties, run away from difficulties, which wouldn't have been a great solution either. So what my nephew do, he found out from the school which skating rink they were going to go to. And on the Sunday before the trip, he went with his son to the skating rink and he taught him how to roller skate. Now, he didn't become a pro overnight, but he got the gist of it. He saw what the place looked like. He saw how other people were doing. And then once he felt more comfortable in the environment, then his son was thrilled to go the next week with his class. So clearly, when we're in tune with our children's feelings and we invest the time and the energy to find the solutions for him, and if it means being involved in the school and finding out from the school where they're going and what they're doing, and this synergy creates a tremendous happy ending like this one. So that'd be my final words. And I just wish everybody tremendous bracha v'atzlacha in everything and raising your children, and you also see tremendous nachas. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. We'll be happy to help out in any way that we can. Contact us at info@myepicfamily.org. You could look up on our website, myepicfamily.org. You could submit questions on our website. You could see other webinars that we've run or any other classes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Goodman, and thank you everyone for joining us for another part of maximizing your child's success. As Rabbi Goodman said, you can reach out to us 24/7 at info@myepicfamily.org. Visit the website, myepicfamily.org, as well as stay tuned for more webinars and a Shabbaton maybe soon by your community, where we'll be bringing rabbis to increase the success wherever you are.